Welcome to the HobbyScool podcast. Whether you're a seasoned hobbyist or just getting started, HobbyScool is the perfect place to learn something new. My name is Dr. Destiny Kopp, and I'm your host of the podcast. But before we jump into our episode for today, the only thing I ask is that if you enjoyed the episode, please share with a friend and give us an honest review on your favorite podcast platform. This helps us get out the content to more people. I also want to invite you to get on our wait list for our next HobbyScool Online Learning Summit. These are free to attend, and you can find the link to join at hobbyschool.com, which is also in our podcast show notes. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. And my special guest today is Amber Petty. Amber helps creatives get bylines and build audiences. After acting for 13 years and getting tired of waiting around for auditions, Amber moved into the freelance writing where she worked with the New York Times, Parade, Bustle, and a bunch more. For the past 3 years, she has helped over 1,000 students get bylines, start writing for actual money, and build a platform for their creative career. Now, Amber, I am super excited to chat with you today because I know that our HobbyScool audience is very much interested in writing as a hobby and, possibly even making some money from it, which I know that is your area of expertise. But before we get into all the questions I have for you, can you tell them just a little bit more about you and how you help people?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I'm Amber, and I have classes and memberships to help people write more, to finally put their ideas out there, to build audiences so that they can have that creative freedom to write whatever they want, and also get published so they get bigger stories, they get their name out there, they get to share little things. And some of what pitching does that's cool about that is it's a thing you can do even if you don't have professional writing experience or an MFA or anything like that. You can write up a short piece, a short pitch, send it, and get started writing right away sometimes. So it's a really accessible thing and great for hobbyists because it lets you start working quickly, put stuff out there for free or paid. And then if you like it, you can do more. If you don't, you still have your work out there.
Now, Amber, we have a quiz on our website, which basically kind of walks people through, what are some hobbies you may want to explore? And I know that folks are interested in it because writing comes up as one of the top hobbies that people are interested in exploring. So let's say that somebody has had in the back of their mind, I really want to write, whether that is an article for maybe a magazine, or maybe they're thinking about their next, their next book that they want to write, or whatever it is out there. How would you suggest that they get started in exploring this?
So you can get started a lot faster than you might think. So when it comes to nonfiction writing, so writing for the New York Times, Huffington Post, Business Insider, any newspaper you can think of, magazine, that kind of stuff. So what editors really need is they need to see a pitch, which is a summary of your idea, and we can get into that in a little bit. And then they need to see an example of your work. Now, the great news about writing is that you can make an example of your work on your own. You can write your own article that's in the style of something in one of those publications you'd like to be published in. You write that up. You can post it on Medium, post it on a blog, on a Substack, just somewhere that's online so people can see it. And that's all you need. That's it. That's all you need to get started. And reading, read the places you like, start to get a feel for what their headlines look like, all that. But by reading the places you like, seeing what ideas kind of come to mind for yourself, making that sample article, and then pitching, that's it. That's all you need to get started. And I've had lots of students get their first byline with just a sample they made themselves. They were published in Huffington Post, Business Insider, had people in The Guardian even, where that was their first byline ever. So the editors are more interested in your story idea and then just kind of like, seeing what your writing style is like, then seeing that you've got, a huge resume of writing experience. They kind of don't care about that. They want, what is the story idea? If the story idea is a little bit interesting, a little bit helpful to the audience, then that's what they want. And they're happy to work with people from all kinds of different backgrounds.
And I love that, what you just said. They're more interested in your story. And I think all of us have some sort of story, right? That we or
Oh my
message
gosh.
that we want to get out in the world. And your thing is, you say that you are only 250 words away from writing for money. I love that. So basically, we don't have to write the entire article that we want to pitch
No.
them. We're just going to give them a sample and send them maybe a pitch email. Is that the 250 words that you're referring to?
Yep, that's exactly it. So just a tiny bit of background, and then I'll tell you exactly what that pitch is. So you could even do this today if you felt like it. So with this, and when I'm saying story, and like we all have a story, we all have a message, absolutely. And then what's cool about these kind of freelance articles is that we're actually telling then just a little piece of it. So you don't have to tell your whole life story. You don't have to only talk about, big traumas or huge ideas. Look at the internet. There is a whole lot of stuff out there, and editors are looking for all of it. So it could be as big as, a story about a really hard time in your life. I had a student who wrote about, losing a child, having a stillbirth. Obviously, a huge story, very important time in her life. That was in Huffington Post. It was an incredibly popular story. But then I've also had students write about things like lists of candy and things to do to make it easier to declutter your house. So the whole range is there. So you can start thinking about what's like a tiny piece of my message that I would want to share, or what am I good at? Like, what do people ask me about? Oh, people are always asking me for tips on keeping my kitchen clean because I'm just so good at it. That's not me in this case. Nobody's asking me that. But let's say you're that magical person, talking about like, oh, actually this one thing I do, how I just use lemons in the kitchen, keeps it fresh all day. Like that can be a story idea. So there really is a lot of room here. So then go ahead.
No, I was just
sorry,
going to
I
say
talk
that.
a little much.
No, I love that. I love that. I really think almost everybody listening has something that they could pull upon, or some type of story, or some type of tip, or something that they could do there. So we have this, pitch that we need to send out, and we have this writing sample that it sounds like we could put almost anywhere, right? On Substack,
Yep.
or Medium or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When we go to send it out to our ideal publication, or the person that we want to start writing for, tell us a little bit about what exactly are they looking for from us? What needs to be in that pitch? What do we need to say to them? Do they want to make sure we have all these crazy credentials, or what are they looking for there?
Right. So when you pitch, you want to pitch to an editor, or often just Google the publication you're looking for and pitch guidelines or submission guidelines. Sometimes they just tell you exactly what they want, exactly what to do right there. Now, a lot of other times they don't, but the good news is they all want basically the same thing. So you're going to send an email. You're sending it to the editor or to the email they give you to submit pitches. Then in your subject line, you put the word pitch and then colon, and then give your pitch, your story, a title. Give it a headline that looks kind of like the headlines that they have in that publication. So if you're pitching something to Huffington Post, for example, if you're pitching a personal essay, you don't want to give it a title like The Beauty and the Sadness, or some kind of like vague title that might be a very pretty book title. But if I see the beauty and the sadness, I don't know what that's about. And when I look at Huffington Post, I'll see, oh, that doesn't look like their titles at all. Their titles are like, My 3-year-old said something and it changed our lives forever. So you want to put it in the kind of style that that publication uses. Don't worry about matching it exactly. Just give it your best shot. It's really great to do that because it shows what's interesting about your story, and it shows you're a little bit familiar with that publication. Then in the email itself, you're not attaching anything. You're not linking to Google Docs or anything. You're just putting the pitch right in the email. You can just say, hi, editor's name. Sometimes you don't know the editor's name. You can just say hi. It can be just hi, hello, any regular greeting. It doesn't have to be like, dear sir or madam. Nope, just hi. Then you can even go as simple as, here's a pitch, and go into your pitch. So, here's a pitch, and then here's the main thing. You're going to answer 3 questions. Not literally, but you're going to answer them within the sentences here. You're going to answer, what is the story angle? Why is it important now? And why are you the person to write it? So, what is the story angle? That's just, what specifically is the story? So, talking about the child loss essay, it wasn't a story that was about losing. That is really a huge story. That could be a whole book. But instead, it was about her 3-year-old, because she had a 3-year-old at the time, telling everybody at the hospital when they said, hey, how are you? She would say, our baby just died. Just telling them for sure. I'm using a very sad example here, but it was a very good story. So by honing in on that moment, she still talked about grief, but it was very specific. Another less sad example of this is somebody who used to be a professional organizer. She said this 5-a-day organizing habit can declutter your house easily. So she wasn't talking about how to declutter your house. Too big, too much there. But she instead talked about how taking 5 things out of your house every day can help you declutter. Super specific. So that's where you're going to say your story angle. That's the story angle. That's going to be 1 or 2 sentences, depending. It might be 3. Usually it's 1 real good sentence there. And why is it important now? This is a really key piece. So it doesn't have to be, why is this the most important story in the world right now? No. But why would people want to read it right now? Is it related to a holiday coming up? Is it related to a season? Is it related to something in the news or something in pop culture? Those are great ways to show, hey, people are talking about this right now, so they're going to want to read about it. If it's not seasonal or there's no timely news piece around it, then you can just make a case for why people want to read it. So for the piece about organization and decluttering, at the time she pitched that around springtime. So she said, as people are trying to do spring cleaning, this is a way to make it easier. Also, she could do that even if it's not in springtime. She could say, as the holidays are coming up, people are decluttering their house to make room for new things. So this is popular. Or if Marie Kondo came out with another book, she could say, oh, as people are looking again at Marie Kondo, it's another great time. So you just find reasons for why might people be talking about this? Why do people need this help right now? And talk about that in your pitch. And that last part is, why are you the person to write it? This is actually not scary. This makes it sound like you've got to make a case for yourself as the greatest writer. Not at all. This is where you just say, hey, do you have any background in this that might be different than another writer? So again, Julia used to be a professional organizer. So she said, hey, I was a professional organizer. I've used this with clients. I've seen it work. Great. That's all she needed to say. I once wrote a piece about Eurovision, which is a European song contest. I didn't have any professional, Eurovision experience. So I just said, I am a huge fan of this. I am always a fan of all the British shows and have watched Eurovision for the past 10 years, which is a little unusual for an American. And that's it. I just had to say, hey, I care about this. So why are you the person to write it isn't about why you're the greatest writer in the world. It's just, if you're a parent and you have firsthand experience or you used to have that as a job, just any of that information is good. And the last thing is you're just going to also give us some specifics. So For Julia's story example with the decluttering, she went ahead and explained a little bit on what that 5 a day habit meant. That it meant decluttering as little as even taking one bobby pin that you didn't need and throwing it away and counting that as one of your 5, and explained briefly how that helped you actually declutter. So you're doing all that information in about 250 words. And the last tiny little thing is just a little bit about you, just your name, where you live, just because sometimes editors will assign you stuff because they need somebody in Nashville to cover something, or they need somebody in Seattle. So that can kind of help. And then you just say a little bit about your writing background. If you don't have a writing background, just say something about yourself that's interesting. That's it. It can be totally unrelated. It could be about your experience in a similar field. You could even just say, hey, I'm Amber. I'm a writer from LA. Here's a sample of my work, and then link to that sample you made yourself. Link to that. It could even just be that, and that's totally fine. So that whole email is about 250 words, and that's all you need to write. That's all you need to send, and that's it. So it's working on these takes a little practice, of course, but you really are about 250 words away from getting a byline. And lots of students have done that. They sent that out. That's all they did. Hey, we want it. Here's $300. It's pretty cool.
Well, honestly, I think you answered a lot of my questions. So one of my questions was, do I need like a website or a social media profile to send them to? And I'm thinking you answered that, right? You don't have to send that.
You don't need to. If you have a big following, go ahead and put that in there. If you have a website, go ahead and put that in there. If you don't, you do not need it. For this, for just pitching stuff, your social media following really doesn't matter at all. So that does not hold you back.
And then you answered my question on the money. So how, in terms of how much somebody could expect to receive for one of these articles, does it vary by publication, or how does that typically work?
It varies a lot, for sure. So like, for example, Huffington Post personal essays doesn't pay that much. It pays like $125 usually. But sometimes those articles get really big. I've had students get invited to the Tamron Hall show from it. Another student appeared on NBC News. It can have a big impact, but you're not paid a ton for those. I would say the average right now I'm seeing is about 300 to 500. If it's a personal essay, so a personal story, those are more in the like 125, 175 range. And if it's more of the tip-based story, something where you're kind of helping the reader understand something or do something or learn something or put something into practice, then those can be more like 300 to 500. And then with some stories that are more heavily reported, there's just more interviews, research and stuff. Sometimes, I've had students make $1,200 from a single story. So I'd say 300 to 500 is kind of the more average you'll see.
And you've talked about some of the publications, newspapers, magazines. Are there any kind of unique type of places that people could send these pitches that we might not normally think about?
One interesting one is Business Insider, because I feel like you hear Business Insider and you're like, okay, well, I guess a business thing. But they actually do lots of personal essays. They do travel stories. So travel is a little bit of a harder market to break into, but they do travel stories a lot and can be an easier way to get kind of your first travel story. So they do travel and personal essays and parenting. So they do just a lot of stuff and they put out a lot of stories. So they have a pretty high demand. So Business Insider is kind of a surprising one that has a lot of opportunity. So that's a good one. And do look around even simple things of, because as hobbyists, there are magazines on crafting, knitting, crochet, painting, everything. So even just Googling something as simple as like, okay, knitting magazines, and you'll still find some surprising magazines you may not have heard of. It's very likely they take pitches. And the last one I'd say is eHow. They also pay more in the $150 range, but eHow, just E and how, they do all kinds of kind of crafty stories. I think for hobbyists, I know I'm kind of focusing on crafts here and hobbies are bigger than that. I think that would be a good one for your audience of they do lots of different tutorials or just different insights on a lot of hobby range, maybe a little bit more to the crafty side, but also cooking, stuff like that too.
So, Amber, thank you so much for all of your wonderful tips. I'm actually going through here. I'm like, could I do some of this? Because I love writing. Absolutely love writing.
Yes, you absolutely could. Oh my gosh. You could write about being a successful podcast host, how to interview people, how to, there's all kinds. That's just from this, of course. You'd have much more.
Before we wrap it up here, any last minute tips for them?
Sure. My biggest tip, honestly, is you just don't know until you try. And I know that sounds simple, but I know a lot of people who think, no, there's just going to be so many better writers out there and better stories and la, la, la. But editors need stories all the time because of the internet. They have to put out a lot. And so they need a lot of stories. And most editors are happy to work with new people because they're not hiring you forever. They're hiring you for one story. So it's easy for them to take more risks. And they want to hear from different people. They really honestly want to. So there is opportunity out there. And yep, there's lots of rejection and all that too. But if you have an idea, just give it a try. We tend to undersell our own stories or think, oh, I don't know, I'm not interesting enough or whatever. But that is just not true. Everybody has so much interesting information and stories and wonderful things to share. And especially for all of you, you've already got so much great stuff going on. And then, hey, it's a bonus if you get published and you like it. What a fantastic thing to have. And if you don't, you can always go, hey, I got all these other hobbies and work to do. I'm cool. So it's really not as scary as it might seem.
Now, Amber, I definitely want people to know where they can find you. And I believe you have a free gift for them also. Can you let folks know where they can find you?
I do indeed. So you can find me on Instagram at Amber N Petty, and like Nicole on Instagram. And then I do have a newsletter where every week I send out pitching opportunities and writing jobs. So it's a good way to just kind of see what's out there. Maybe something will inspire you to pitch. But the best way to get on my list is to also get my list of 250 places that pay writers. So it's 250 publications. They all pay. So it makes the searching part of it a little easier. And that's yours for free if you just go to amberpetty.com/250. So just 250, the numerals. And yeah, you'll get that 250 list you can keep and, check that out. You might see some publications that surprise you that you want to check out.
Well, I'm definitely going to sign up for that today. And we will make sure that all of those links are in the show notes so everybody can connect with you. And thank you so much, Amber.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you so much for listening today. Don't forget to sign up for the waitlist so you'll be the first to know when our next free HobbyScool online learning summit launches. The link is in the show notes for this episode, or you can go to HobbyScool.com, and that's HobbyScool with school without an H in it. Talk soon.